thank you very much, Pamela, for bringing me in. I appreciate you having me speak this morning, and I appreciate all of you coming out in this ungodly early morning to listen to what I have to say. I work, as Pamela was saying, I work a lot with law enforcement and military, and I work a lot with schools as well on gang activity and giving teachers and this type of thing tools on how to manage classrooms better and how to model leadership much more effectively. Some of you actually even know me from a previous life. I was in, like you, I was in corporate America for 20 years, right? And this was my passion, but never my full-time employment, up until about 2 years ago. About 5 years ago, I went back to college, and I'm still finishing out my master's and going on for my PhD in what's called ethnohistory. And ethnohistory is the study of how cultures come together either through assimilation or through conflict. So my specialty is the Middle East and globalization. So that is the macro of what this is, which is the micro, what we do every day. I want to show you a little video first to kind of set it off. And this video is going to be different than what you're probably used to in the corporate arena, right? But it's going to make and drive home some really important points. And I want to start off with that. So let me get it going for you. But before that, I thought this was kind of funny and appropriate, right? So these two folks are sitting around the microwave and the cooler there and saying, except for the people, the hours, the work, the stress, and the pay, this is the best job I ever had. And don't we feel that like that sometimes? You know, if it wasn't for the challenges that we had, the conflicts that we were in all the time in our day-to-day work, that we could, actually enjoy what we did. I can't help you with the pay. Can't really help you with the work or the hours. I can help you a little bit with the people and with the stress. So that's what we'll talk about today. All right, so heads up on this. I don't know how loud it's going to be with the audio, but this should be a little interesting for you this early and in your respective professions.
Inside this county lockup in Tampa, Florida, inmates can outnumber the officers 60-1. And when dozens of prisoners are allowed to roam free in the common room, it requires constant vigilance by the guards. What's up, Today, Deputy Ken Moon is the only lawman on duty, a fact that he's about to be brutally reminded of. Out of nowhere, one of the cons charges behind the desk, locking Arcade Road in a lethal chokehold. Even worse, it looks like he's got a full-blown riot on his hands. But these charging inmates aren't attacking the deputy. They're actually trying to save his life. The Good Samaritans in jumpsuits deliver a dose of jailhouse justice, unlike any Colonel Jim Privatera has seen before.
The first guy in there, just with all his momentum behind him, just comes in and tags the guy.
But it takes a lot more than a haymaker to break the enraged felon's hold.
They couldn't break his grip. At least one of the inmates tells us that the deputy's face was beginning to turn purple and was about to go unconscious.
And as the struggle ensues, one of the inmates even calls for help on the radio. A small army of orange-clad convicts subdues the offender and helps hold him down until he's come for good. Deputy Moon survives the ferocious assault with only minor injuries. His attacker will likely add some bonus time to his stay in the big house. As for the other inmates,
undoubtedly, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. I mean, they did save that guy's life. They demonstrated that that deputy has earned their respect.
It goes to show that even in prison, when intense pressure hits a flashpoint, anyone can be a hero.
A little shocking for a Thursday morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, hello. You may be thinking to yourself, Craig, how the heck does this relate to what I do on a day-to-day basis? And it's not about the violence. I'm not talking about the violence. If you think of what that officer was able to do with the people that he was in charge of, what kind of respect was he able to build? What type of camaraderie was he able to build? What type of team was he able to build that when the chips were down and the people did not have to help, that they chose to? If you could get this type of loyalty, this type of respect, and this type of camaraderie with your clients, with your sales force, with your employees, with your coworkers, to do things that they don't have to do for you. Now you have an adversarial aspect with, if you would think in normal circumstances, a correctional officer and an inmate, right? But yet those inmates were willing to step in and literally save the guy's life. And they didn't have to. So how would one inspire this type of respect, this type of loyalty, this type of camaraderie within any team is really the big question. That's what we're going to explore today. All right. Hopefully that wasn't too much for you so early. I'm used to working with a different crowd. Okay, what's conflict? So I need anybody, it doesn't have to be Webster's dictionary version, but what is conflict? Any point at which two people disagree. Would you guys concur with that? Yeah. I think that's a pretty good explanation. I want to open that explanation up a little bit, right? We have conflict. Like, we would love for the world to be nice, right? But let's face it. We have conflict in our relationships with our significant others and our families, right? And this is the guy that almost ran me down this morning getting here, right? I think I was telling somebody the story, right? We have conflict in our schools, right? These young people took their lives because of bullying. We have conflict in relationships and schools. Again, if you remember Yearly Love last year, her life was taken by her boyfriend. If you remember Columbine, disrespect turns into conflict, turns into violence. Right? Disrespect for you means your clients go away. Disrespect for you and what you do means you have more strife in your workplace, that you have less productivity, that you have less sales, that you have more competition. We just came upon the anniversary, 10-year anniversary of this, just not that long ago. Cross-cultural conflicts, right? People not seeing eye to eye. We deal a lot with this. So actually, a lot of the guys on RGI that I work with were there. There are a lot of them from the East Coast, New York. So some of the federal marshals who brought in some of the Al-Qaeda, as well as NYPD hostage negotiators who were on the scene at this. Conflict isn't anything new in our history. This is the Nazis marching on Warsaw right before they razed it to the ground. This is a 7-year war, before we were even the United States. Right. This is over in Libya just recently. So conflict isn't anything new, but it doesn't necessarily have to be out there. It could be your angry client, your angry kid, or a student, right? Or your angry customer who calls up and didn't get what they had expected, and now you're on the other end of the phone and you got to deal with it. I want to redefine conflict for everybody here today. Conflict is really an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to have a deeper, more meaningful relationship with other individuals, whether it's a spouse, whether it's your child, whether it's a student, a client, a partner, an employee, if you're a manager. Let's face it, good times are fun to have, but that's not really where the rubber meets the road, is it? It's in the bad times that we establish the relationships. Matter of fact, if you can get through a conflict with a client and you do it well, what do you become? What do you become?
Service provider for life.
Absolutely, right? If you can help your clients get through one of their conflicts, what do you become? You're the hero. So when the competition comes and tries to kind of weasel in on your client at that point in time, who do they call? You, saying, hey, I just was approached by this guy and I wanted to talk with you about it. So what they're saying sounds pretty good, but I just want to get a better idea. And again, I was in corporate sales for 20 years, right? I just decided to get out. That's all. But a lot of these concepts work in that as well. We're all people. It really boils down to relationships. Whether we manage them, how we manage them is really the difference. So conflict really is an opportunity. So we have conflict with the wrong attitude and wrong approach is, quite frankly, it's disaster, right? One of your clients calls you up and has a problem, and you're like, every time you call me, you have a problem. I know, because you don't call me with good stuff, you always call me with bad stuff. Or that employee pulls in the office, and you're like, what is it now? Every week it's something. You got a problem with somebody, you got a problem with me, whatever, right? We have these people in our lives, right? Troublesome, difficult. Let's learn to turn them around and make them our best clients, our best employees, our best partners. Because conflict management, right, the right attitude and the right approach equals an easier path for you. It means success for you and your company. Whether it's your sales numbers, whether it's your management team, whether it's your employees. Because it really, again, is about relationships. Your team's over here. It's about your bottom line if you're in sales. If you can learn how to better manage your conflict, you can learn how to better manage your clients and your bottom line, quite frankly. Right? With your family, with your significant others, in schools, right? This is huge. And we have to, I have the luxury today of sitting and actually talking with you for a little bit of time, which isn't a lot of time. Trust me, we've got a whole 24-hour program that we cover just how to talk to people. But you often don't have the time to sit down with your client and go, okay, here's the rules of the communication games, and this is how it's going to go. Right? You have to model the behavior. Because people are watching you, how you deal with other people. And then they will learn from you. Right? And eventually it grows into our communities and our global community. Because the way we deal with ourselves internally reflects in what happens externally. The conflict, folks, is not out there. It's not in a different country. It's not in a different neighborhood or a different company. It's in each and every one of us. And then we take that conflict and it's expressed externally. Some of these ideas that we're going to share today may seem too simple, but I'm here to tell you, globally, it's essential. With your business, it's essential. With yourself, it's essential. So if conflict isn't the problem, can anyone tell me what is the problem? So if conflict is an actual opportunity to learn better and to engage your clients better and your family better and other cultures better, then what's the problem? Communication, I think that's definitely part of the problem. Absolutely.
Right.
Attitude, absolutely. Anybody else?
Ego.
Ego, that's a huge one. Whew. Been working with that one for 40 years. Misunderstandings, yes. I heard something up here as well. Reaction, yes. Kelvin, I love Kelvin. But really the problems are this. Our perspective, how we view the conflict, and our habits of how we deal with the conflict. And we'll talk a little bit about that, right? The problem is how we were taught how to deal with conflict. I'm here to tell you, folks, I've been doing this stuff for 20 years. Adults do not deal with conflict well. Adults are masters and mistresses of avoiding conflict, right? Passive-aggressive behavior. They don't want to talk to you, they don't return your phone calls, they don't return your emails, right? You get ticked off, you walk out the door. And that's one way of dealing with it, right? The problem is when you have to deal with it, right? In my field, a law enforcement officer pulls somebody over, there's a conflict, he has to deal with it or she has to deal with it, right? It could be you and your client or you and your employee. You can't leave. You could tell them to leave, right? Or your client could leave, but that's not really the most effective way of dealing with that circumstance. So how can we deal with it to turn it around, to spin it, to make it an attribute, to make it something positive? So it's really common sense that's not so common. Everybody thinks they know, and they don't. Because if they knew, we wouldn't have so much violence in the world today. We wouldn't have the things that are happening in the schools today. We wouldn't have your clients leaving you or strife with employees, right? Because, hey, if everybody knew it and it was common sense, everybody would know. Right? So these are some tools that we're going to be using and talking about today. The 5 essentials for conflict management are this. Right? I've got my little icons. Our compass. You need a compass. And that compass, and we don't have, this is very, very deceiving because it seems very simple. And I will introduce it to you, but literally this concept will change the world. And it can change your world. But we don't have enough time to talk about it. Very in-depth. So it's going to sound like, of course, that's simple. Why wouldn't I do that? But it's the idea of universal values. Universal values. A relative value is something that some people agree with. A universal value is something that everyone agrees with. You may think your relative values are universal, and that's when we get a lot of conflict that turns into violence, right? You have, in our world today, I do a lot of work in Israel, right? So if you've been watching the news the past, 10,000 years, you probably you probably understand that there's some conflict over there, right? Palestinians and the Jewish communities don't get along. They have relative values, that of religion, that they cannot come to terms with, so they are willing to go to blows with and over. Right? Hopefully your life isn't quite that difficult. But what is universal value, and how do we get back to that universal value under pressure? You've got to be the eye of the storm. I don't care what tools they have. I don't care if they're verbal tools. I don't care if they're physical tools. If you cannot keep it under control psychologically and emotionally, you will not be able to utilize those tools. So how can you keep your emotions in check under pressure? It's easy to be an armchair quarterback, right? It's difficult when your emotions are involved. We need a map, and the map tells us human behavior about ourselves and about other people. Because sometimes you might think it's a direct conflict and it's the end of the story, and it might be step 2 of a 10-step process. Right? You might be making headway, you just don't know it. Within yourself as well as within other people. So we use statistical evidence and human behavior models to help with that, and we'll talk about that as well. We need tools, a specific step-by-step approach, how to deal with people emotionally, verbally, and yes, even physically. Right? And then the final thing is we need reinforcement. Reinforcement comes from good leadership, because if you do not have good leadership, it's very difficult to do the right thing when there are people around you telling you that you're not. You also need constant practice. And here's the cool thing. With conflict resolution, you get constant practice every day, right? Because we run into conflicts every day. And we need to reactivate this idea all the time. Learning it is one thing, but you need to activate it. So, what I call the PeaceWalker, right? One who walks in peace. Our compass, or our GPS, is those ideas of universal ethics and values. Now, the idea at the core is all life is to be protected and respected. And I'm going to try to apply that a little bit to more of a business model, but that is really the crux of it. All life, even the people you don't like, even our enemies, even the assailants out there, the life value is to be protected and respected, not to be confused with their actions. Right? Let's say, one of the easiest ways of explaining this would be, who here has kids? Raise your hand. Most people, right? Do you love them? Right? When they do bad things, don't you want to kill them? Right? But you still love them. You still punish them, but you still love them, right? And it's as simple as we've got to extend that mentality to everybody. That is really what our Constitution is based on. Right? We the people hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal. Right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The funny part is Thomas Jefferson and George Washington owned over 300 slaves. Right? And all men, they meant men back then. It was not men and women. It was land-owning men. And I won't get too geeky because I'm a history major, so I can go off on a tangent there. But the idea is that's what we're living up to, is this idea that their life value is equal. Not that you make as much money as I do, or or you drive a better car than I do, or you're taller, I'm shorter, you got hair, I'm bald, whatever. Those things aren't equal. And that's fine. The idea is that your life and the things that you care about are just as important to you as my life and the things that I care about. Up until the point to where they are in conflict with you other than my life, right? Just like with a police officer. If I have to take someone down in the line of duty, whether it is just arrest them or, it's early, or kill them to protect somebody else, I do it to protect life. I don't do it because they're black or white or Muslim or Christian or, from this country or from that country. But that's how we train people. That's especially how we train our military, right? We're the good guys, you're the bad guys, and we're taking care of you because, it's our duty, and we're better than you. It's the process of dehumanization. It's wrong. And that's what happens. What happens next is PTSD, right? You've got to justify why you are committing those crimes to someone else. When you realize at a visceral level that they're just like you, they have family just like you, they put on their pants just like you, they eat just like you, they have the wants and needs just like you do, and the hurts. And then you have to somehow justify how that discrepancy happened for the dehumanization to hurt them. And we do that in business as well, right? So some fun little things, right? It's a dual life value. It's us and them. It's you and your client. It's a win-win situation. Because if you put your needs in front of your client's needs, what happens? They won't be your client anymore. Right? I love the don't tread on me. And the reason why I love that one is the real reason why we separated, or one of the real reasons, there's many, but one of the real reasons why we separated from Britain back in the day wasn't because we were paying taxes. It was because we weren't seen as equals and we didn't have equal representation. It was due to disrespect, because many of our founding fathers wanted to stay in the Union or with Britain. Right? So that was a huge decision for them. It sounds real easy, right? Respect everyone. Just treat everybody with dignity. Just get along, right? Up until you're not getting what you want, or you think you're not, right? And there's some type of a conflict. So, my Homer Simpson being circled by sharks. Once you feel threatened in some way, it doesn't have to be physical. It can be your beliefs. It could be your job. In today's market, that's not too far-fetched, right? It could be your biggest client. It could be that you need a job done to get to your biggest client, and it's not getting through production quickly enough. So what do you go stomping into production area, demanding what you need? D&D printing. Where's D&D printing? I was in printing for SVH, and right. So when my job wasn't getting done, I was freaking out because I was a full commission sales rep. So what did I do? I stomped back there and try to get my stuff done. So when you feel threatened is when it really hits the fan, not when you're kind of feeling comfortable. Everybody has a different perspective, right? This guy, right? Both of them are thinking, can't do anything right. I don't know what year that computer was, but it's and as we've heard a million times before, right? I love this picture too, right? The universe revolves around me. This is our clients in the middle. Right? And the whole WIIFM, what's in it for me? So trying to create a win-win situation and understanding, being empathetic to the other person is difficult under pressure. We're going to adapt this for a second, but I heard a great quote from a North Dakota State trooper. We treat people like ladies and gentlemen, not because they always are, but because we always are. Right? Not because they're always acting that way, but because we are. So let's talk about the professional, right? We treat people with professionalism, not necessarily because they always have it, but because we do. And sometimes that's difficult under pressure. But you notice the people who excel and do the best at their field typically uphold those professional standards. And it's tough to sometimes. What we want to do is try to make allies, not enemies. Did that officer in the video that we saw earlier, did he build allies? Right? Sometimes in our jobs, and definitely in their jobs, they have to gain compliance from people, make people do things they don't want to do. Maybe it's you're collecting revenue that they're late on, right? So your client hasn't paid you, you got to collect that revenue. They don't necessarily want to pay. The bills are tight. Let's face it, this economy's bad right now. So you can get compliance, right? You can get them to pay, and then they can go away, or then they can be mad. So we'll talk about like the idea of getting compliance, but then that's kind of the least level that we're trying for, is getting compliance. When we're doing these things and we're trying to establish these relationships with people, if you hold on to these 6 elements, this is the foundation really, stemming from the universal ethics and the universal value, right? If you can get these 6 keys to work when there is conflict, when somebody doesn't want to do what you ask them to, right? You have a greater opportunity of building cooperation and camaraderie and creating allies. The first one is people want to be treated with dignity and respect, period. Even and especially if they're wrong, right? Even if the assailant is robbing the bank and I need to take him in, I still need to treat the life value with dignity and respect, even if you don't respect the actions. If you're trying to get money from your client who hasn't paid in 6 months, and you know they have the money because they've been paying everybody else, right? You want to kind of go off on them. However, you can get them to comply, but you still need to treat them with dignity and respect if you want to build an ally and not just get what you want. We need to show empathy. And what's the best and easiest way to show empathy? Listen. People want to be heard. People want to be asked, not told what to do. You need to pay this bill, it's late. True. But asking it in a more congenial way may get you better results. Right? Is there any way, or what do we need to do? How can we help you to get what I need, so we're both happy, right? Because I am going to get paid one way or the other. I mean, you're thinking in your head, right? But how can we do it to where there's less conflict? People want reasons why. Well, why? Because, I don't know, let me think, you bought it, so of course you should pay for it, all right? People want choices. They don't want to be intimidated. They don't want pressure. They'll pressure sometimes, right? But not intimidation. If you want to build allies. If you want to bully people and get compliance, you can absolutely do that. That would be fine. But you're not going to build an ally. You're not going to have some inmate save your cookies, right? When they don't have to. They could just stand back and go, I've been wanting to do that for years. See you later, Officer Jones. Thanks. Right? And the final thing is, if you can help them to save face, you have earned the right for their business, hopefully for a lifetime. If you can help them to save face, especially in front of their boss, in front of their peers, from their colleagues, especially if they screwed up bad, and you can come in and make them look good, right? Rather than making them look even worse. Right? This is huge for teachers as well. If you reprimand people in front of other people, or if you're a manager, right? If you're a manager, you've always heard the whole little maxim, praise in public and criticize in private. This is called the I experience. And I'm just running through some tools for you guys to give you a kind of an overview. But I experience. Our experiences shape our perspective, right? Glass is half empty, glass is half full. Why? Because I've experienced one or the other, right? Your perspective will determine your choices on what you make, how you make them. Those choices will determine over time, not overnight, your habits. And the habits will be of three things. The habits of how you deal with your emotions, the habits of how you deal with other people, and the habits of how you deal with circumstances. You'll notice most people have a habit of how they respond to these things over and over. It's the difference of you picking up the phone and making that cold call or not. Your habits will determine your emotions. You cannot deny your emotions, right? Your emotions, it's a chemical cocktail that we feel. You can't deny it. You can change it over time, though. You can change how you feel in a circumstance by breaking this pattern, right? Because if you build good habits, you'll feel better. Your emotions will be different. If you develop bad habits, then this is the same thing psychologists use when that I work with about like panic attacks. People have panic attacks, right? They let their emotions overrun and short circuit their function. So they have to break the cycle. Everybody has natural responses when they don't get their way. Right? I had a natural response this morning. I wanted to kill the guy who was almost like crawling up in my trunk. Right? That's what I felt like. Right? Get away from my car. Right? This is how we often want to react. This is a natural reaction when you don't get your way, when you feel under emotion. It could be fear, it could be anger, it could be intimidation. But what we need to do if we want to act tactically, we need to be cool, calm, and collected. So even though inside we might be really afraid, but we need to come across in a way that we can get intel, get intelligence. Right? So we can understand who we're dealing with and how to handle them, how to communicate with them. Well, spy versus spy. Because the idea is to create an ally rather than an enemy. You may be the problem if you can't keep your emotions under control. It might not be the circumstance. It may be you. In order for you to know how to respond to someone, let's say you're a salesperson and you're talking with a customer, what you think is the situation is about the price. But they don't think it's a price at all. What they think, they want timing. I need it now. I'm willing to pay 30% more if I can get it tomorrow. But you don't know that because you come in talking about price. Because you're dealing with what your internal mechanisms are thinking, what you've been conditioned under the circumstances to do, not listening to what they want. Right? The idea of tactical communications is to gain voluntary is kind of the key word, voluntary, compliance, which is the bottom line, cooperation, collaboration, right, which leads to cohesion, which is a greater connection between you and whether it's your team member, your employee, your spouse, in that case of the video, the inmates, right, and some type of camaraderie. Everybody see like the Harley riders when they're riding down the road and they do that little like handshake thing that I don't know what it is, but they have a special wave. Or the Jeep guys, right? They don't even know each other, right? They don't even know each other. I'm sorry, but talk about good marketing. If you, I don't know how many millions of people have Harley Davidson tattoos on their arms. Now that's marketing, right? If somebody's willing to tattoo your logo on their body, you can't get much better than that. So if you can build camaraderie in your businesses, Harley Davidson does it. Who else does it? Apple Computers does it, right? Steve Jobs. Who else? Build a community, build camaraderie, build a connection, not just compliance. If you can do that in your lives, you are eliminating conflict before it happens. You don't have to resolve it because you can work it out. And a lot of it's not even there. Or, if you're just getting compliance, those are those guys who dial for dollars all the time because they have no customer service skills, right? But it's good they can dial because they always need new clients because they can't take care of them. If you can build camaraderie with your clients, or maybe it's those businesses that can never keep employees because they don't treat them well, because they treat them like cattle, like they're easily replaceable. So they always have to have new ones. If you can build a camaraderie and teamwork, just think of what your organization could do. Just think of what your sales numbers could be if everyone knew that you were there for them, you had their back, that you wanted what they needed, right? You wanted to get them what they needed over what you think you want. So the idea is to really build this community. All right, Pamela 2, I need to know time. 5 minutes? Okay, good. I'm just kind of breezing over some of these things. What we need to know about people, right? There are thousands of different cultures out there. Well, all you need to know is about 3 types of people, right? There's nice people. Think about your clients, right? Or your employees. You have nice employees and nice clients, right? You have challenging clients, don't we? Right? Challenging employees. Not so happy. And then there's the sneaky ones, right? They're deceptive. They will smile to your face, and then what do? Right? Behind your back. Oh, yeah, let's do lunch. They'll never call you. Oh, I was late again. I'm really sorry. And they come in late again. Right? There's 1,000,001 examples. Now, nice people, you ask them one time, let's say they don't do what you want them to do. You ask them one time to correct the behavior, and they do it because they're nice. But here's the thing. You have to communicate it well. If you don't communicate it well, and you don't draw your boundaries, and you don't say anything, because you don't want to ruffle their feathers or whatever it might be, they're not going to know. We're not mind readers. But if you tell them in a respectful way, they'll comply. They'll come around. Challenging people, they're multi-stepped, right? Every time when you tell them one time, they will say no. Or they'll give you static. When you ask them again, oftentimes they say no when they'll give you static. But somewhere between 3 to 5 times, you'll get them to come around. So if you stop at 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 times, all you hear is no, 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 so you think they're absent and you fire them. All right. In the meantime, we have to help them understand through those 6 steps that we were talking about earlier. Show them dignity and respect, right? Ask, don't tell, give them reasons why. Right? Listen to them, empathy. Right? Listen to what they have to say. Allow them to save face. Oftentimes we want to go, depending on your personality type, intimidation is very common with some personality types. Right? I ask you once, if you don't do it, the hammer comes down. Didn't I ask you? Maybe I'll ask you twice. Then the hammer comes down. Deceptive people, you'll ask them once, they'll say yes, but it's clouded in deception, right? Because they won't really do it. But it could be a nice person, let's say an employee doesn't do what you want them to do, but you never really ask. You just assume that they should have known, they could have known, they would have known, but they didn't. And you didn't really clarify exactly the expectations or draw your boundaries. So now all of a sudden you go off on them, so you made a nice person a challenging person. Or maybe if you really got under their skin, you made the nice person a deceptive person. Challenging people will come around about 8 out of 10 times. So if you know who you're dealing with and you can keep your own emotions under control, you can come around. You can make them, help them to make better decisions. All right. These things have got to be taught, not activated. Right? Well, taught and activated, excuse me. To know them is one thing, but to activate it within yourself would be like, everybody here, you remember back in high school when you had gym class and you worked out? I don't see any high schoolers here anymore, right? So if you're thinking you're in shape and you haven't worked out for 20, 30, 40 years, you're not, right? I'm sorry, you're just not. So it's got to be activated. It's like mowing your lawn, right? You mow it, and what happens to your lawn? It grows. You got to mow it again. So these things, all these keys have got to be activated, reactivated over and over and over again. That's why it's so important that leaders are on board and they can give all the skills and tools that we're talking about. Right? So knowing is not enough. Because once again, once that emotion hits, logic often goes out the window. You start that habit of however you're used to getting what you want. Sometimes it's conducive and it's good, sometimes it's not. So what we need to do is dissect that and figure out what's going to be best suited for the situation for you. When things become relative, it's really easy to see a perspective that is weighted one way, right? Your ability to stay cool when you're not getting your relative needs met is really key. And I'll leave you with this. One of my mentors, Joseph Campbell, I had never got to meet him, unfortunately. He died before I figured out, but with his books and videos and all that, if you haven't checked them out, I'd recommend it. But he says, when we talk about settling the world's problems, we're barking up the wrong tree, right? The world is perfect. It's a mess. It's a perfect mess, if you want to say, right? It's really always been that way. Our real job is to figure out and straighten out our own lives. If we can all straighten out our own lives, the world will change, right? Because the problems aren't out there. They're in each of us. And that's it. Thank you very much.